I'm trying this new flip thing with my hair. I'm gonna see if it actually stays this way the whole video. France is a wonderful place and I absolutely love living here, and I've loved living in the UK, I loved living in Spain, I have loved living abroad in general. But I grew up in the US, I lived there until I was 20 years old, and you know what? I miss some things about it. That's just normal. If you spend any amount of time in a place, there are gonna be certain things that stick out to you, and especially when you've grown up in that place, there's gonna be a lot of nostalgia tied to certain things. I have seen a ton of other expats and people abroad do these types of videos, things that they miss from their home country. So I thought it would be fun today to do the same thing, things that I miss from the US. Some of these things might affect my day-to-day life quite a bit, but for the most part, these are kind of small, minuscule, silly things that I grew attached to, and I kind of miss some days living in France and not in the US. This could definitely become a very, very long video or a series very easily, so I will just try and narrow it down to 7 or 8 of the things that I quite commonly kind of miss being here. It's certainly no secret that I love coffee, so let's just start with a coffee related one. I really miss about the US the coffee shop study culture. I think in 1 or 2 of my videos from months ago when I first moved to France, I mentioned that it can be really weird to work in cafes here, and I have since discovered there are certain places where it's acceptable to work in cafes, like of course Starbucks and things, but there are also some very local, at least in Paris, some very local cafes that are not chains, that it's still okay to work there and they have Wi-Fi and everything. But even though those places do exist, a couple things. 1, they are harder to find, and 2, I feel like there are fewer of them. In the US, it's just really common for a coffee shop to be simultaneous with a place you can come and work and study. And in France, you have a lot more of the cafe culture, the terrace culture. You come and get your coffee, you chat, or you sit and you people watch, but there's less this culture of gravitating naturally towards a cafe as a good place to work. In the US though, it's not uncommon to find places with great big comfy chairs and couches and like little study corners that are specifically designed for group study, individual study, you know, comfy chairs. That's like one of the biggest signs. If you have Wi-Fi and a comfy chair, little area, you know it's more than welcome. Like people are meant to sit there for a long time. That's why you have a comfy chair. Linked to that, because, you know, coffee runs my life basically, I kind of miss the coffee on the go culture from the US. Here in France, usually when people want to have a coffee, you will go and sit down and get like a little, you know, espresso or just a small coffee, and you'll drink it and it'll be fairly fast and you'll pay and you'll go. And you'll do that before work if you want to have a coffee. In the US though, and North America in general from my experience, actually a lot of these can probably apply to North America in general, but it's really common to grab a coffee and take it to go. So it's really easy, even if you're kind of running close on time for work, to still grab your coffee if you didn't have time to make one or if you don't have a machine at work. Everything moves so much faster, especially in a city. So a place like Paris in the US, so comparing it to like New York, Chicago, there's just no way people would sit down and actually sit and have a coffee out of a glass cup in the mornings. I know there's a huge issue with disposable cups, but that's also why a lot of places like Starbucks and other coffee shops will have tumblers and things you can buy there. I have 2 mega huge, you know, Starbucks tumblers that I would often carry around with me, and I'd often make my coffee at home before I left and just put it in my tumbler and leave with it, or I'd pick something up on the way and just have them fill it in my tumbler. So you can be good to the environment and still take your coffee to go. But it's just that whole culture and system of picking up your coffee and walking with it down the street. Whereas in France, when I'm walking down the street with my tumbler, sometimes I feel a little bit awkward. It's probably just me because I don't really think people care that much, but at the same time, I often will notice I'm the only one. Like, I'm the only one on the metro who's carrying my coffee to work with me. I've not seen anyone else before. I don't know why I like it, because it is kind of nice to be able to sit and have your coffee and enjoy it. But at the same time, I move really fast and I like things to move fast, and I'm often running too late for work to actually pick up coffee. So yeah, it works much better for me to have that on-the-go culture. Another thing I miss really badly from the US is things being open all the time. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it actually is true in a lot of cases because we have a ton of 24-hour things. Where I lived in the US, it was a fairly small suburb. It wasn't even really that close to a big city, and yet we had a Walmart about 3 minutes drive down the road that stayed open 24 hours. So there literally was never a time in the night when you couldn't go and get something. In both places I've lived in Paris, and keep in mind this is Paris, this isn't even countryside France, but the latest that something has stayed open near me is 10. Usually closing times for supermarkets range from 9 to 10 in my experience. But what's even more is that a lot of places will close at random days in the week. So boulangeries, for example, where you get your bread, there are a ton of them, especially here in Paris. They're quite close quarters. So there's usually one that's open near you, but they will close at a random day in the week. So like my boulangerie not too far from me closes on Thursdays, I believe, and before the boulangerie that I was using closed on Wednesdays, and it's just a random day in the week that they're always closed. A lot of other types of places will be closed on Mondays, and then on top of that, almost everything is closed on Sundays. Almost everything. Coming from someplace where there's literally a 24-hour Walmart just down the road from me, it's really unnatural to even imagine any time of day when I couldn't get something if I needed it. I just really miss the convenience of knowing that at any point there's something available if I need it. Since we were talking about grocery stores so much, let's segue into a little bit of food. Just a few little foods that I miss from the US. The first thing is salty popcorn. Yes, you can get popcorn in France. I posted recently on Instagram something about my sister bringing me popcorn from the US when she was here visiting me, and a couple of people asked me, can you get popcorn in France? Is that something they don't have? It does exist, let me reassure you. But a couple things that make it very inconvenient. First of all, it's much more popular to eat sweet popcorn here. So a lot of times what you'll find is more like kettle corn, which I love. I adore kettle corn, but sometimes you need the salty popcorn fix, and it's really hard to get here. The second thing about popcorn in France is that it's often much more expensive. In the US, you can get, big boxes of popcorn in bulk, and it doesn't cost very much, and you have just walls of choices. Well, actually, when I went back home for Christmas, I noticed there's half an aisle dedicated to popcorn of various different kinds. Sweet kettle corn, as well as movie butter popcorn, regular butter popcorn, light butter popcorn, just so many options. So right now, I'm just trying to make the popcorn I have from the US last as long as possible. Another food I really miss from the US is non-flavored tortilla chips. So let me explain. In France, it is possible to find tortilla chips, and you can find a flavor that's called nature, so natural or normal flavor. However, right next to it, you're gonna see fromage, cheese flavored tortilla chips, and chili flavored tortilla chips. So basically like Doritos. The natural flavored ones are also seasoned. I've never actually looked at the ingredients to figure out what they season them with, but it is nothing like a plain tortilla chip. But my problem with this is that, first of all, it's probably much more unhealthy for you. Second of all, it doesn't taste very good in salsa because you have the competing flavors already, whereas a normal natural tortilla chip has no real seasoning, so you can really get the flavors of your salsa. I sort of framed that like there'd be a third of all, but now I don't remember if I had a third of all. But basically, I miss the normal natural flavored tortilla chips, which my sister also brought me, and I have sitting over there, but she brought me 2 bags and I only have a half a bag left, and I don't want to reveal to you how many days it's been since she left. So the idea was to make them last, but yeah, that didn't happen. Another thing I miss from the US is bulk buys. So in the US, it's really easy to find stuff, usually, in big packs. This is really convenient for things like non-perishable foods or things that you're gonna use, like toilet paper and toothpaste and things that don't go bad and that you literally will always need. In France, I've found this to be much less common when it comes to how people approach buying their stuff. Some of this might be influenced by the fact that I'm living in Paris. It's a big city. There's very little storage space in the majority of our apartments here. Even so though, I've talked to a lot of people and I've made a lot of observations in the countryside as well, and it just doesn't seem to be quite as common of a mindset. For me though, I really do not want to go to the supermarket every couple of days. I would rather do it once a week, get everything I need for the week, and then live off of that for at least a week. And especially when it comes to stuff like, I don't know, toilet paper, like I said, or toothpaste, tissues, things like that, that I just want to always have that around. And that's not at all the mindset of a lot of the French people that I've met, including my husband. The last thing on this list might be slightly controversial depending on your particular personality type, but I really miss small talk in the US. And smiling at people and just making connections with strangers. I have heard so many varied opinions on this from the different people I've talked to, from different YouTube videos that I've watched, but overall, I really miss just being able to have those little connections with random people and just feeling a little bit more unity, I guess, with the people that are around you. In France, obviously, people are people. You can have conversations with strangers, things can happen, and I have had people randomly say stuff to me, make little comments, nice, friendly things. That happens, even in Paris. I promise you, it does happen even in Paris. But in general, in my experience, even in the countryside, it's just not quite as common to have that openness of being able to just randomly strike up a conversation. I have gotten used to this, and especially because I live in Paris, in a big city, I mean, I often don't really feel like interacting with all the strangers around me. There are tons of people always around you, so you do kind of get this locked off type of mindset. But every time I go back to the US after spending time in a different country, I notice it. It never fails. The second you land in one of the airports in the US, because I'm from the Midwest, so I almost always have an East Coast layover, and the second you land in that first airport, before you even get out of the airport, you notice the vibe change, and I do every single time. All of a sudden, it's not so weird to make eye contact with strangers. It's not so weird to be waiting in line for a restaurant or for the airplane or for anything and just strike up conversation with the person in front or behind you. And it's just kind of nice. It's not necessary in any way. It just kind of connects you with your environment a little bit more. Okay, that is enough nostalgia for one day. If you live abroad right now, or if you have lived abroad in the past, let me know in the comments, what are some things that you miss from your home country? Like I said before, this could definitely very easily become a series or a very long video, which I'm really hoping this didn't become, but we're gonna find out, I guess, in editing. But it could easily become a series, so let me know if you want to see more videos like this in the future, or if you want me to do something like, I don't know, things I like better in France and in the US. I've seen Patricia B in France do a video like that, or maybe a couple videos like that, and I've seen some other expats do the same thing. So definitely let me know if those types of things are anything you'd be interested in seeing from me as well. It's kind of fun to just compare different places and different experiences that you've had and figure out things you really like about places, or maybe things that you don't like so much, especially when you get down into the tiny little minuscule things that don't really matter, but that do make a difference to you, and things that you actually do notice. Like salty popcorn. I mean, I can live without salty popcorn, but I miss it still. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon in another video.